I'm Ryan Betson from the Pop Cultures, and today I am joined by Paul James from player2.net.au, and today we are talking about Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. So we should let everyone know, full disclosure, both Padge and I have been provided this code via Turn Left distribution for review purposes. We've had it for the better part of like 2 or 3 weeks now.
Yeah, how awesome's it been?
It's been awesome. But to kick things off though,
love you.
Padge, give us the rundown. What is this game about?
Man, before I even get to that, it's so good to be doing a podcast with you.
It's so good. It feels so
Holy
good.
shit.
It's been forever since it's just been like you and me. It's
and we can't even blame the lockdown because we're both outside of it. But
yeah, we could have wandered over at any point.
It's just families and all that sort of thing, so whatever. Sakuna is basically like a equal parts farming sim. So there's your love right there, but like action RPG. There's even some little hints of like roguelite-y sort of elements in there as well. They're really kind of sprinkling in a whole bunch of different elements here. But the whole idea is that Sakuna is a goddess, lives in this very special realm full of other gods and goddesses, and she kind of fucks up. She lets some humans in accidentally. They had good intentions, but they also fucked up and destroyed a whole like store of their rice, which Sakuna is like the harvest goddess, so that's kind of her deal. The whole thing gets wiped out, and they basically get sent like as a punishment sent to this demonic island that's getting a little bit out of control and been tasked with the job of straightening shit up. And so that's basically where the gameplay kicks in at that point.
Let's clear this island of its demonic forces, and then we will probably let you back in to Oasis, to Valhalla, to heaven, whatever they decide they want to call it.
So it's not it's not an open world game. It's very much like a 2D side-scrolling action game. You've got like their nodes on the map that you're going to, rather than just exploring a big, large, interconnected world. I guess it's interconnected, but yeah, you've got to bounce from node to node.
So it's not a big open world experience. They are very clear, like this is this level and this level and this level. They're not quite levels as you would under the traditional senses. They are like nodes, little locations where you'll go in and you'll do your side scrolling platforming goodness. You'll collect a bunch of assorted consumables, and then you take them back to your little homestead where you get in the part that I'm really enjoying, which is you have your rice paddy or rice paddies, and you grow rice there. You use those consumables that you have to feed yourself and your human companions, and then you just build together, and then you go and do it all again. Come back, make better rice, feed your crew some better, upgrade your weapons, all this sort of RPG sort of stuff, and then go do it again, unlock new nodes, and repeat, and come back and compete. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is that, like, the leveling system, because, as obviously mentioned, it's an RPG, like, the leveling system isn't linked to your combat proficiency. You can't just go out and farm enemies to level grind or anything. It's actually based on the quality of the rice that you're producing. So, like, again, her being a harvest goddess, her capabilities in that space impact the leveling system. So you actually want to make sure, you don't want to just toss that to the curb and go to bed each night without actually feeding the folks and all that sort of. You actually want to put the time in and go through the hard yards to make sure that the rice is the best quality stuff you can possibly make. You get more resources, and opportunities become open to you later on to kind of fast track that and to improve the different methods to improve the quality of your rice later on. But you want to make sure that you're nailing this day in, day out, and it's a full year process. Now each season is 3 days long.
3 in-game days,
12, yeah, 3 in-game days, which really, what would you say, probably 15 minutes long?
Yeah, something like that.
Roughly, something like that.
Depends on how much time you spend in and out and in and out. So, so there is like day-night cycle. So as you're, you wake up in the morning, you do what stuff you need to do, and then you head out into these nodes where you'll clear out the level, clear out the little location, grab all the stuff, and you may have enough time to do another location before night hits. Then when night hits, all the creatures are stronger and smarter, and take way more damage. And you're like, unless you're at a point where you can do that, you better get the fuck, as you said, just like get out of Dodge. You know what I mean? And then make your way back and feed and whatever. So you can go for as long as the day-night cycle allows. Probably not within your best interest early on. But yeah, so then
you will get reamed.
Yeah. So then while you're doing that, you're also, following you're caring for the rice, getting all ready to go, growing it, harvesting it, drying it, like shucking it's not the word I want, like threshing it and
Threshing it, yeah.
Yep. Hulling it to, make varying level of quality, whether it's like brown rice, white rice, whatever you want to do. And they all provide different stats and improvements on how you want to play. Now, as the name suggests, Sakuna, it is it's steeped very heavy within sort of Japanese animation and that anime sort of style. Now, I am one to be on the record for poo-pooing anime graphic, or anime in general, but anime graphics within games. I find that 9 times out of 10, they look like shit. Like it's really low quality 3D modeled stuff in order to try and make it look like the anime style.
And I'm usually 100% with you, but isn't this the 1 out of 10?
This is the 1 out of 10. This game
Holy
is
shit.
beautiful at all times.
Yeah. It's kind of got this, so it does have that anime style, but it also has this slight hand painterly style to it as well.
So it's cel shaded,
the two
but
bleed
like
together
not
really well.
in like a overtly cel shaded way, like Borderlands or any of these other anime side of games. It is like, okay, it's cel shaded esque, but yeah, like the especially like the backgrounds and stuff are a bit more hand painted esque. Like there is a beauty in it, especially with like the fluidity of Sakuna's robes. She uses a ribbon like to help traverse. So like those little extra details, I think, add to the beauty overall. But
I think more in line with Okami, for example, as opposed to
not
other
as
anime games.
Not as artistically driven as Okami, but in that same level of like, wow, like this looks really good.
Tipping in that direction as opposed to the heavy.
Yeah, if you start thinking of other games like, I don't know, like Attack on Titan or any of those sort of like Fairy Tale, I know.
Yeah, it's not that.
Yeah, like that kind of anime-ish sort of game.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I'm
stunning.
Constantly like, this is mad. And I'm not even
cool.
the demo for that style of game or that style of art. Like I'm on the record of being a very strong anime hater. So for me, in order for me to praise it like this, it's doing something.
Yeah, no, I mean it's the style's incredible. You find yourself latching onto the soundtrack as well.
Yeah,
some of that music is awesome.
Yeah, I do,
especially early on. Some of those first few tracks in the first few levels, they're killer.
Yeah. But to keep with that anime style, though, the characters themselves do sit within that anime tropism, I guess, because you do have Sakuna, who is like a mortal god, but she's in the body of a young girl. She has that very like high pitched,
squeaky,
quirky, anime voice. It's like I can't even do it, but it's like that typical anime girl voice, where all the other characters have very similar esque voices. They do sit within that space, like they know the demo that they're working with.
Well, yeah, there's like the big fat oaf guy that they always mock. Then there's the the little kind of couple that's not, and all those sorts of little archetypes that they're trying to hit on, and that's then reflected in the voice acting as well.
Yeah, she's like an animal companion that's like all supposed to be all wise. He talks like an old wise man. You know what I mean? It's like, it kind of hits a lot of cliches there, but I don't find that intrusive a lot of the time because I do kind of hang on what they say a little bit because I'm kind of interested in how it all works.
Yeah, the characters work. Like they do fit all these cliches, but they actually click together really, really well.
Big time.
And riff off one another perfectly.
So, because one thing you mentioned at the start here, Padge, was the amount of different genres that are present within this game.
Yeah.
Especially with and game mechanics. How do you find that? How they integrate? Like how they sprinkle amongst each other? How they all come together? Give your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, obviously of all the various different components that are there, the kind of farming sim part does kind of stand alone a little bit more. Like you could easily see this game operating without that whole component if that's what you wanted to. But it's obviously a key pillar of the narrative as well. So it was never gonna get the axe. But beyond that, like I mean, people are familiar with the likes of your Hollow Knights and those sorts of games. Like there's a lot of those to the moment to moment action. You do have these little roguelike-y sort of elements, and this kind of fits into the resource collection and all those sort of things that you were talking about before, because not only are you looking to collect those resources to help build your crops, but you're also looking to collect those resources to build yourself new weapons and build yourself new armor, and obviously some of it goes towards just feeding yourselves per day. Like all of these little systems are just touching on each other and drawing upon each other, and it all works seamlessly. I love it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I loved it across the board. I didn't... Well, we'll talk about the farming simulator stuff because they said that's my big wheelhouse. That's what I love. I'm a big... Because, like, when I got the email from our friend Kat, who works at Turnleft, she's like, it's got a farming simulator. You want it? I'm like, yeah. She knew, like, I'm like, Kat, you know me, man. Like, you get me. You understand. So, yeah. So, that's what got me in. And I didn't realize how much of an integral part that would have in this game. Because as you mentioned, like, I thought it'd be like, this is just a little side, like almost like a side mini game that I just sort of do. But then you start to realize that, yeah, it is a key pillar within this game. It's not called Of Rice and Ruin as a pun.
For no reason.
You know, it is, it's not a pun. Like, it is a big part of what this game is about. And I'm enjoying that because it's all about like, all right, we got to build compost. Like, how is that compost integrated? Are you going to, you know, how... Because depending on how the rice grows, like, is it, you know, if it's more root heavy, it's going to get these properties. If it's more, you know, leaf heavy, it's more these properties. So you can adjust the compost accordingly to how you want it to go. And it's those little subtle changes within it to make kind of go, this is a little bit deeper than I anticipated. Where, you know, you're
using... Did you find, though, with the...
No,
sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, did you find with the compost, though, that you were just loading as many different resources into it as possible to just hit, like, there's a triangle. There's the three different
Yeah, so I did find that. Like, there's, like, the leaf...
And I just tried to load up.
I would try to do the same thing. I'd be like, well, I'm going to make it as good as possible. I would never just, like, max it. I would be like, okay, well, I'm not going to put just 30 things in there. Like, how many things does it need? Like 5? All right, you get 5. Like, I don't overload it. But it's a great way because as you start finding, like, meat and stuff, like, you know, when you attack creatures like rabbits and boars and other assorted things that you find in the wild, you know, you take that meat back to, and if you don't treat it correctly when you're doing the cooking side of things, it becomes decomposed meat. You're like, well, shit, I didn't just waste all this resource. It's now brought into the farming idea. It helps build a better compost. You know, that, and then you also got to take into account like water regulation or how that rice is placed throughout the field. And as you play more, you know, you start to unlock little extra features, little skills where it'll, you know, you'll be able to see a grid on the paddy. We're like, well, all right, well, I know I need to space them out according to this grid in order for them to grow at their best ability. That, and then you're like, well, I know how much water is going to be needed. You can see weeds before they happen. You know, all these little details that make that side better. And then when you do go out into these little nodes and locations, you know, you do hit that side-scrolling, like very Ori or very Hollow Knight, as you sort of said. Like, that's the feeling that I got. You know, where it's about, you know, jumping and timing and hitting and using that ribbon as your way to traverse the level as well as dodge enemies. So you'll attack, you'll use your ribbon, you'll swing around them, maybe you'll pull them, give them a bit of stun damage as an example, keep it on going. And there is some adaptability in that. Like, on paper, it seems like a pretty easy combat system, but there is a bit more to it. Like, as you sort of unlock these additional abilities where I think one's called like Tidal Wave, where you slam the ground with your big two-handed weapon and it kind of lifts everybody up in front of you, or it's a spin attack or a downward like spiral, all these different little things. And you need to know how to use these different skills. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. Like, if you relied solely on just light and heavy attacks and jumping and dodging, you'll never get anywhere. You know, there are varying like boss fights that throughout the game. And the first boss fight's relatively simple because it's the first one. And then it's like, hey, here's 2 more. And you're like, oh, fuck. And each of them require different ways of going about it, you know. Where and
I mean, early days, you and I were actually bouncing off each other and going, "How did you do this one?
You hit, you know, you use this move to hit enemies into the boss, and that's how. If you hit them, you're not going to do crap, but if you throw other enemies at it, that's where you get the knockdown, or attack them from above. Use the spiral down attack on this enemy, and that's their weak point because they're going to attack you forward and backward. So you need to get above them. And then
and it's not like you know, the video game trope where there's big glowing weak spot. Like, no, it's coming at you. It looks,
and it's trial and error.
As fuck. Yeah.
And like, because like there's no lives or anything here. There's like, aside from just starting the level again, there's really no negative impact here. It's giving you, it's learning from failure. So you're like, well, that didn't work. Well, we start the level again, and you go, all right, well, let's try a different process. Let's use different thinking to attack this boss or this area. And I personally like that a lot. Like, you're not being punished. Granted with like Demon Souls right around the corner where you're going to be like punished up just like crazy. It's nice to have this. We're like, no, rethink your approach. Try it again.
And sometimes you do have the right approach, and it's just simply down to execution. So there is a little bit of that soul sort of
in terms of
there, but
probably
it's not,
like the timing side of things. It's more of a like look for the right hitbox, or take advantage of those invincibility times. Like when you use the rope, you're invincible for a moment. Take advantage of that and sort of play a bit smarter, not harder.
Yeah, and you'll learn from your mistakes there. You'll start to learn some of the enemy's movement patterns and their attack patterns and those sorts of things. And once you do that, they become fairly straightforward to exploit. You might die half a dozen, maybe even more times. I don't know about you, but there's a couple where I've died 10 plus times.
Quite a good number of times, yeah.
And as you said, the punishment isn't too bad, especially when it comes to the bosses. They do actually kind of create a little breakout section there for them, and you into that kind of room, quote unquote. So if you die, they just take you to the beginning of that room. You don't have to go all the way back to the beginning of the level, the dungeon, or whatever you want to call it, to redo that.
The game itself doesn't even penalize you in terms of waiting, because the load times in this game are immaculate.
Yeah,
like you
fast.
You boot it from the menu and it goes, here it is, hi, what do you want to play? And like you can be in the game playing in the space of like 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah, and it's not even a PS5 title.
No, not at all.
It's crazy.
And like, I'll be one of the first games that I install on my PS5. I'm like, well, how do they improve on this?
They can't. That's literally how fast it is. They can't. There's just so many little quality of life things like that are really impressive. But I'm really struggling to fault it. Like, sometimes there's a little bit too much exposition at the end of the day,
but
where
that's
you all
anime.
sit down as a group to
That's
you sit
anime.
down as a group to eat your dinner, like that waffles on a little bit, but that's about it.
Because this is something on a complete side discussion, right? So for those that don't know, like with my day job, I use games as therapy, essentially for individuals on the ASD on the autism spectrum, and a lot of them like anime, and we were trying to work out why. And one of the reasons that we've sort of come up with is exposition. Like, anime is incredibly good at explaining what they're thinking. There's no subtlety. So they will be like, I'm really angry at you, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And like they explain it. And if you have ASD, you don't understand social cues. You're not really good at picking up other people's emotions. This is what you get that, and we're seeing that here in this game because it is that trope. So they're telling you what these characters want to do. Now, granted, it's a bit long, it's a bit like monologue-y, dialogue-y, diatribe sort of stuff. But within that genre, it works because it's like, we're going to tell you exactly what these characters' motivations are, exactly what they're feeling, and it's like, bam. Beautiful.
But it is also good in another sense. So at the end of each day, again, you can opt to not sit down and have a meal with the other humans, the ones that broke in with you and are also copying the same punishment. You can choose not to and just go and rest and sleep.
But you are penalized because you're not eating the food. Like, if you're not eating the food, you're not getting the buffs.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of buffs you can get. But I actually don't, like, as much as they can waffle on a little bit, I do like those still. I feel like I'm building that relationship with those characters and learning little bits about them, and they are telling little stories as you go. It's not just I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that. Like, it's, here's a little bit of history of this and that and the other. Like, some of them are quite cool. They can balloon out time-wise every now and then. I go, oh shit, I'm just going to mash through it so I can get back to the next day.
But there are some times
I want to go harvest my crop.
There are some times where you sit down and they just go, all right, cool, and they just eat.
Yeah, I think that's when they've exhausted all the stories they had for you in that particular chapter of the game. Like, we've told you everything, so now just end the day and off you go. Get some sleep.
Which is kind of nice though, because that way you're not feeling like it's been waffled at. Because like when I first, up until that point, I'd hit with every day. I'm like, all right, cool. Like I appreciate what they're telling. They're providing background, understanding to the world and the characters within it. Because, some of them have, like, sort of, you learn their backstory, like, especially with the humans, as you're playing. And I'm like, all right, cool. Oh, cool. That's more about you. But then the first day I noticed, and I was like, I set the menu, and I was like, well, I want these sort of buffs for the next day. And then no one spoke. And I went,
oh. Do you not like the food? Do you really enjoy the food?
Did I do that?
No?
Like, did I fault that with my choices?
But no, and it turns out you didn't.
Turns out I didn't, but... Yeah, like, so have you had any, like, sort of technical faults? Because having played this as early as we have, was there any sort of pickups that you had?
No, nothing at all. It's been clean sailing the entire time. And yeah, again, we've been playing this game for about 3 weeks before 3-4 weeks before launch at this point. So
I myself, I don't know whether it's my fault or the game's fault. There were some times, especially when I was executing these ability moves, where I felt that I'm pressing it and in the right direction, pressing circle or whatever, and it wasn't registering. So like I'm getting hit because I'm trying to execute this ability, and I'm like, am I doing it wrong? Like there were some times where I felt the hits weren't registering in particular ways, and like
I had a couple of those, but I considered it, and this was only my experiences, of course. I considered that me being basically interrupted, like I'm going.
That's
to
what I
attack.
thought it was too. So I just want to point it out, just in situation of maybe it is, maybe it isn't, because we were told in the content in the review material that like updates are coming, and they will continue to come. So, what we're seeing was a build upon release. So, once this releases in the coming days on PC and in the coming, it's
10 days later.
Yeah,
November 10 for PC, and then we're playing it on the PS4, and that's November 20 alongside the Switch version as well.
So presumably in the next 10 or so days, those things will be ironed out. So before you even play it, you're going to see these improvements.
And they're so minor as is.
Yeah, so as up at this point, I think I've spent like, what is this, like 8 or 10 hours? That does tell you, I just haven't pulled up and had a look, but I think it's like 10-ish hours. You probably put in that substantially more time in it than me.
Yeah, this is a seriously long game, and not in a bloated way. The gameplay loop works perfectly. You're always just being drip fed the next thing, and there's always something enticing to go out and get, whether it's a resource or there's a new node that's opened up, or you've got the direction that you're heading for the next boss, or like the next key story beat that you're going after. But yeah, I mean, this game is several dozen hours long. Like, if you really want to get super deep with it, you're playing at least 40, 50 hours.
Which is fantastic, especially coming next generation, because I believe Assassin's Creed Valhalla video probably either out now or out shortly after this one. It's a situation of like, these next gen consoles are expensive. You may not have time, you may not have the dollars to go buy a bunch of games at launch. So you want ones that you can invest your time in. If you equate time and money as sort of a comparable with here, like this game, beautiful. Like here's your money, and you get a stack of time out of it, and you're gonna enjoy.
But then, like I said, it's not bloat. Like that's the impressive thing, is not bloated. Like, this is an amazing gameplay loop that you can just... And, like, it's diverse. Like, again, this is a pairing that shouldn't really work based on history anyway.
Yeah, on paper, like, when you list it out and you're like, it's a farming simulator game with some roguelite aspects mixed with side-scrolled action platforming and with the occasional sort of 3D exploring. You're like, on paper, you look at that and like, that's a hot mess. How is that a game?
Actually, I do like going back. You mentioned the 3D bit. Like, I do like going back to the homestead, and actually everything flips to 3D, and you've got this small little hub to explore. That's quite nice. And the art style holds up even when it makes that transition. Yeah,
and so it's like when I first read it, I was like, that sounds absolutely crazy. I'm gonna just get really confused. It's gonna hurt. Not even the case. The way it integrates all these different things together sort of delivers a really unique, but also comfortable and familiar game.
Yeah, and this game was on my radar a little bit. I don't think you knew anything about it.
I didn't even know about it. It's like, it wasn't until I got that email saying, "Hey, it's got farming sim stuff. You want to check it out?" Like, apart from that, I had never thought about it.
Yeah, it was kind of on the background, especially knowing it was coming out around next gen time. But I'm so glad that we got it as early as we did and got to explore this, because this is like Game of the Year contender territory for me. That's how good I consider this game.
Yeah,
and this is a stellar year, of course. There's some amazing games and some more still to come, again with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X coming out. But and of course Cyberpunk that's just looming over everything. But this is worthwhile being in that conversation. Yeah, and it's one of those things, like, and it, because I know you're on a similar page with me when it comes to like anime shit. So it's like having you or I both be like, even regardless of its anime base and history and context, it's still a really, really good game. Like, that's some high praise. I'm just saying. Yeah, no, I can't speak highly enough of the game. All right, well, then just wrap it. Give us some of your final thoughts, Padge. Is there anything we've missed? Not really. We've touched on everything. Like I said before, I mean, maybe the thing that we've not delved into as much, like that soundtrack is incredible. Like, just I've constantly catching myself bopping along to it, or being very happy to just go back to a level, and I know I've already exhausted all the resources here, but I'm just going to run through it so I can hear this again, because the levels themselves, especially if you decide you want to just smash through them, speed run through them. They take only a few minutes long. It's just hooks everywhere. And again, this is a mash of genres that just shouldn't work, but does.
Yeah.
And does it perfectly. And I'm so stoked that I got the opportunity to play the game, because it might otherwise have gotten lost. And I hope that any of you watching / listening to this right now, regardless of whether you're picking up a PS5 or Xbox Series X or not, you are putting this right up there on your radar, and it's definitely one to consider and watch closely as the year plays out.
Yeah, very much so. Because to add to what you said, this wasn't even in my radar, and I wouldn't have even looked at it. No, I hadn't looked at it. I haven't heard of it. And if I pulled up the PSN on a random Tuesday, when the new games drop, and I saw it, I'd be like, ha, nah, and just keep going.
Shit.
Yeah, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. Yeah. So, yeah, playing it and being impressed and enjoying it, and all its little details, all these little parts that, as I said, they on their own they work. But then you build them together, and they almost come together into this nice little house where everything sort of supports each other, and it all kind of works in this amalgamation of genres. So if you like farming sims like me, mad, that is a good part of the game for you. If you like, as I said, action platforming with a little bit of difficulty, sort of like Hollow Knight, Ori stuff, you're in. But you're not penalized if you're not really good at one of those other parts.
Yeah, they all speak to each other, and if you're not super proficient in the combat side of it, well, just grind it out with the farming, because with each year that passes, you harvest those crops, and that bolsters your stats, and so you can offset some of your potential inability or comparative inability, and yeah, you'll suddenly just be able to just wail on them and brute force your way through it if that's what you need. Yeah. Just don't go out at night time.
And it is it's one of those games that you just don't even realize. You find yourself, it's been 4 hours later, and you're like, wow, I've really done a lot. And I've really enjoyed my time. They just kind of you've realized you've opened up a stack of nodes. You're creating all these different foods that you're thinking about. You're actively thinking how you're going to be doing your rice better. Like what sort of components? Should I take into account this, or should I focus on my magic, or my health, or my stamina, or my or my special points, or whatever.
It works as a game like that where you're talking about, that you can put 3-4 hours in and feel like you've accomplished so much. And it also works on the other side where you could jump in for 10 minutes and be like, okay, I want to go to this level, and I want to do with this. Now, whether it's something story based, or whether you're just going to go harvest some more resources, or whatever the case is, because you want to go get a new obsidian axe or something, or hoe, or whatever it happens to be, you can just go out, get that stuff, come back, you're good.
Yeah.
Couple in-game days passed, and then that resource is replenished again, and you can go out and get a little bit more. It's just, you can just chip away at it in little bite-sized chunks, and I have done that because I've brought my PlayStation into work a couple of times. Okay, great, I'm gonna smash this out between a little bit here in this recess that we've got here. Teacher by profession, so don't have that much time. But
I may have done the same thing.
Yeah, and then you just chip away in little bits, and it works in that way, and it works as a big long marathon game too. You can play it in so many different ways, or both, and have a great time doing it.
Yeah. But there you go. Don't do what Ryan Betson Dunn did. Pay attention to this game. Check it out. Grab it. You'll enjoy it. I don't think it's a full price game. I think it's 60 something Australian dollars.
Yeah,
so
$60.
$60. So it's not even a full $100 game, and it presumably will work on your PS5. It's a big, good game for you to check out. Big thank you once again for the team over at Turn Left Distribution for providing the codes for both Padge and I. Little did you realize that by instilling the seed, you grew a rice stalk that is Game of the Year potential.
Yeah.
But thank you everyone for checking out. Padge, give you a little spiel here. Where can they find you?
You can find me at Paul James Games on Twitter. You can catch me in some of the various podcasts. Dev Diary being my number one little baby these days. Lots of really cool developer guests from all around the industry
Chase
coming
down
on and
some
sharing their
Sakuna
stories.
people, I reckon. I'll just be like,
that'd be nice.
I love your game.
Gotta get. Yeah, I don't know if the language barrier will get in the way there, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, some really, really cool developer guests coming on the show there. A lot of written work over at player2.net.au, though I am doing a little bit less these days. I've got another newborn, so that's that takes a little bit of the time in the day away from me, as I'm sure you well know. And also rival PlayStation podcast, Operation PlayStation with Dash. So go check that out as well, where you can hear me regularly rant and make thumbnails out of it.
That's right. Well, for myself, if you're looking down below, you'll see that logo there. This has been a little spin-off cutout of For the Players, the Pop Culturist PlayStation podcast. That's our weekly PlayStation-specific show where we talk about the ins and outs of PlayStation as well as the industry as a whole. I myself, I've got like 6+ years in the games industry. I sometimes think I know what I'm talking about. So it's a good place to check out if you want some PlayStation goodies and some information around that stuff, especially as we head into the next gen. But until the next time we see you around these parts, maybe you've liked, maybe you subscribed, maybe you've checked out the podcast. Who knows? Until then, I'm Ryan Betson. I've been joined by the lovely Paul James. I don't know which side you're on. You're on that side according to the screen, so I probably should do that. And this has been our review of Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. See you all very soon.
See you guys.